Okay. Woohoo! We're back. We're back. Okay. And everyone is still here. I've closed additional things that were not working. Hey, you found my new W emote. It's not an animated emote, but I had to make it an animated emote for it to work. For me to have the room for that one. But yeah, I love those ones. That was actually my preferred set of emotes, but it didn't have animated emotes to go with. So if I could make some animated emotes out of those, I would totally switch to these guys because those guys look like the Phoenix that I imagined. Okay. So we were talking about Gaza. There we go. Did you have any questions based on what I've given you? I do highly recommend that the Speed Sisters documentary. There we go. This one's set up for the other browser. I really enjoyed it on Peacefire Now stream, and I might just play it. It would be cool. And yeah, I learned a lot from it. And yeah, what I imagine people lived like in Palestine doesn't look like what I thought it did. Now, keep in mind, this is from 10 years ago. Peacefire Now did end up finding an update on how everyone was doing, and it's good news for everybody. Just they're not all living in Gaza anymore. Or sorry, they were in the West Bank. Okay. So yeah, give it a watch. It will probably answer some more of your questions. Oh, over here. And yeah, maybe give you a little bit more background on Gaza. I don't want to Yeah, the problem with demilitarizing Gaza has been staring everyone in the face all along, of course. It's so daunting that the U.S. has begun planning for a situation in which Hamas retains control for the western half of Gaza and keeps its weaponry while the reconstruction begins in the Israel-controlled eastern half. But time might not be on the Trump administration's side. So yeah, it's demilitarization. Yeah, it does sound like a bad idea. A good idea in theory, but a bad idea if the people whose guns are being taken away don't want their guns taken away. Yeah. It's going to be complicated. It does. I mean, a demilitarized Gaza, a demilitarized Gaza. It's just the only way you could see it working if Israel also demilitarized. That's not going to happen. That is absolutely not going to happen. But yeah, if we can, it's worth it for peace, right? Oh, yeah. It's worth it for peace. But what is that peace worth? Just saying it's the only thing you can see working, yeah. In an alternative universe. Yeah, which is why I wanted to talk about this, is because I wanted to get into it, but I didn't. Yeah, experts warn that the longer it takes to make progress on each of the Trump's plan's main provisions, the more the status quo will set in, with ominous implications. Disarming Hamas will be a process. It will take time, said Nimrod Novik. What a name. A veteran Israeli peace negotiator. And if there are no further Israel withdrawal, however limited, and no international stabilization force, and no beginning of reconstruction, then the temporary becomes permanent. And we definitely do not want the current situation to be permanent. So come on, Hamas. Come to the table, please. Please. There's got to be a way for them to feel like they're retaining control militarily, but to demilitarize Gaza. And we have a situation where Israel is here, Hamas is there, each controls half the strip, and the inevitable friction will mean a resumption in fighting. To supporters of a two-state solution to the conflict, the Trump administration's forceful approach to Mr. Netanyahu in achieving a ceasefire in Gaza has been hugely welcome. Yes. But it is also frustrating because it contrasts so sharply with what they see as the Trump administration's hands-off approach to Israel-occupied West Bank, where extremist Jewish settlers have been marauding through Palestinian communities with little to no consequence recently. Yeah, and we have ads back again. Okay. Nadav Tamir, Israeli director for J Street, the liberal U.S. pro-Israel lobby, as opposed to AIPAC, which is more conservative, said he wished the Trump administration would adopt a similarly tough-minded and assertive approach to Mr. Netanyahu's right-wing government over all its dealings with the Palestinians. I'm sure the emphasis was not his. He imagined U.S. headquarters in the West Bank, much as the Trump administration has set up operations hub for Gaza and southern Israel. He imagined the U.S., not Mr. Netanyahu, deciding when the Palestinian Authority had improved itself adequately. And he imagined the Trump administration asserting itself to curtail settler violence. But that's hasn't Mr. Netanyahu been accused of war crimes? Oh, absolutely. He committed war crimes in Gaza. Period. End of sentence. He should have to answer for those. He actually has been part of the reason why he keeps doing all of this is because he wants to stay in power. Because the second he's out of power, he's kind of been convicted of corruption in a major way and has been doing everything he can to avoid being held to account for those crimes. And kind of the way Trump with Epstein was doing whatever he could to distract from Epstein, including starting stuff off the coast of Venezuela and making it look like they might go to war, all to distract from Epstein. A lot of this is to distract from Mr. Netanyahu's crimes. It makes me beyond angry or punk nonsense, which is why I normally don't follow the conflict very closely, because it just makes me sick with anger. I think of my friends' cousins, and I don't even know if they're alive because so many kids have been starved. Oh, give me a second. Down you guys go. Oh, neuropunk, that's why my knowledge on the topic is limited. I can only take so much horror before I cease being able to function. Yeah. For better or worse, I'm more focused on our situation with the US right now. Yes. And part of it is for the worse because it's a genocide. And something has got to be done. And I'm kind of glad that Jared Kushner, I'm sorry, Donald Trump, it's because it's totally Kushner's peace plan. Yeah, and plain power feel defeated and despondent. Well, I was going to save him for later, but shall we have a story to pick us up a little bit, guys? Let's stop talking about Gaza because I'm also kind of at my limit. That one's interesting, but that one could work too.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Hello, Morgan. Welcome in. Thank you for the Princess Bride redeem. I appreciate you. It is super important, but it hurts my heart so much. Gaza, Ukraine, US and Canada. It is a lot. It is a lot. Which is why I'm like, let's do some good news. I've got really good news for the end. That should pick out all of us up a bit. But I found this earlier. And let's take a look at this one, shall we? Once an anti-vaxxer, this Alberta nurse now helps worried parents overcome fears. Yes, we needed a win after the Gaza. We needed a win, and I'm glad I found this today. This is I planned a bunch of stuff last night at like 3 a.m, but I found this one today, so let's go with this. And hide distracting items. You were distracting. You were distracting. You were distracting. Yeah, in Alberta. When her 2-month-old daughter wouldn't stop crying after a vaccine shot, Lydia called Public Health in Alberta seeking some advice and reassurance. Instead, she says the call left her feeling dismissed and humiliated. They weren't very helpful and kind of blew me off as a first-time mom. Told me it was normal and that if I was really afraid, I'd take her to ER. I just kind of felt it just kind of felt embarrassing, and it didn't make me feel like I could trust them. Lydia is now a licensed practical nurse and vaccine advocate. The CBC is not revealing her full name because she says she's faced threats and harassment relating to that work. But that public health call was the start of something else. For years, Lydia was a proud anti-vaxxer. The call happened in 2008, shortly after Lydia and her husband moved to rural Alberta. She'd given up work to care for her daughter and didn't have any family nearby. Frustrated by her interaction with public health, she turned to an online forum for mothers where other moms had recently helped her with breastfeeding advice. It felt like when I talked to the other moms, they also cared about my child in a way that I didn't feel when I called public health. You have to have the sense of community, she said. When I told them about my daughter's vaccine reaction, they had all these cautionary tales, and it just scared me out of continuing to vaccinate her. Lydia's daughter was fine after a couple days. Up to that point, Lydia had generally trusted vaccines and the medical advice around them. But as she read more online, she said she started to gradually believe the myths she was encountering, in part of a desire to protect her kids. And that's the problem with this is No matter how smart you are, how good you are at critical thinking, if you hear the same or read the same message over and over and over again, you're going to start to believe it. That's just the way the brain works. It's how brainwashing works. And so, yeah, having these online forums where people can read the same message over and over again about how scary vaccines are, you're going to learn to that fear. And fear is something that we learn extra fast. Living in a blue zone is hard. Yeah. You're in Edmonton, but in a blue area of Edmonton. Although your MLA is orange. Nice. Yeah, especially if you don't know how to read statistics. So she initially slowed down her daughter's vaccine schedule, then skipped some entirely. When I had 2 more kids, I did not vaccinate them either. I just fell victim to misinformation, she said. And here's the measles outbreak, it's just appalling. The fact that we have endemic measles again is awful. Read/analyze statistics. Yeah. You have to know what it is the statistics are saying and what the limitations are, right? So this year, Canada's experienced its worst measles outbreak in decades, with almost 5,000 confirmed cases as of September 13th. It was declared eliminated in 1998, in my lifetime, after a universal 2-dose schedule was established. According to Health Canada, 88% of confirmed cases this year have been in unvaccinated individuals. I'm just worried about that 12%. That 12% who probably are immunocompromised in some way. Those are the ones I'm worried about. There's a reason so many classes were spent on stats for your psych degree. Same here. I've got a Bachelor of Science honors in psychology, specializing in behavioral neuroscience. So yeah, it's devastating. Cannot underestimate what a hospitalization, even the best of places, means to a child and their family. We don't have high mortality, but we do have really good incomes. But it doesn't mean the suffering and trauma to the child and family going through that disease. And then the pandemic, of course, fueled vaccine hesitancy, which we're all pretty aware of at this point. It says COVID-19 pandemic had a specific impact on vaccine opposition. There was a myriad of public health measures that people felt interfered with their daily lives and freedom, and I think the vaccine ended up taking a lot of the blame for it. Measles 101, it is airborne and extremely contagious, guys. Extremely contagious. So back to Lydia. By contrast, the pandemic was when Lydia started to question some of the anti-vaxxers movement's views. For years, she'd been told that sanitation and hygiene were important in reducing the spread of disease. But those same proponents those same anti-vax proponents who said, sanitation and hygiene were important, were now objecting to hand sanitizer and masking. The hypocrisy of the movement kind of made me consider I could be wrong. I tried to question whether other anti-vax points she had spent years believing in, emailing her questions to experts. I had immunologists and PhDs and pediatricians who were just willing to go through each and every myth I believed, she said, as opposed to the health authorities that started her on this quest, on the downward spiral towards anti-vax. I can talk today. Give me a second. Oh. Time is... Yeah. Oh. So, everybody, don't forget to hydrate, eat something, and take your meds. Oh, mine was only a BA. I was too bad at chem for a Bachelor of Science. Yeah, I got through it. I got through organic chemistry 1 and 2. And then looked at organic chemistry 3 and we're like, I don't need you. I'm not taking you. I made friends with very smart people in those classes. Not that I'm not a smart person, but yeah. I had immunologists and PhDs, just willing to go through each and every myth. If you have someone with patience like that, it makes a big difference. Excuse me. Another myth was shattered around the same time when her son was diagnosed with autism. Many anti-vaxxers argue that there's a link between childhood vaccination and autism, although those claims were debunked decades ago and have been debunked repeatedly over time with giant population-wide studies, like looking at everybody in a country, not just a section. Lydia refused to believe that he could have the condition, initially thinking she had done everything necessary to avoid such a diagnosis. But she eventually accepted the diagnosis and its implication that the vaccine link is a myth. My son was completely unvaccinated, and he is autistic. Oh, measles. Becoming a vaccine advocate, Lydia decided to vaccinate her children, but it still took time to get over her long-held fears. I hate the vaccine autism myth so much too, neuropunk nonsense. It makes me really, really mad. I mean, the implication is that it's a bad thing to be neurodivergent, and that it's something to be avoided. And, risk stuff like measles and mumps just for the sake of avoiding neurodivergent diagnosis, which runs in families, guys. It runs in families. I recently I discovered 1.5 years ago my own autism. And once I discovered that, I saw it all over my family. And the secondary stuff that goes along with it, I saw all over my family. And then one of my nieces looks like she's on the autism spectrum. And accepting that early, my sibling and my brother and sister-in-law have done an amazing job with her. ADHD here. That's why I missed the autism, was the ADHD. I missed the ADHD even throughout school. It was only after I was done school that I realized it and got diagnosed. But yeah, a lot of us empathics, the people who are empaths, people who are highly empathic, kind of runs with autism. You can be, because it is the co-masking. It's the, having to mask all the time. You pick up on other people's behaviors and thus their moods. And you're like, how do I make sure this person's mood doesn't turn against me? It's very, the whole idea that people with autism don't have feelings the same way the rest of us do is complete myth. It's just, we don't communicate on the same wavelength. Once I started ADHD meds at 30, the autism became undeniable. Yeah, it makes sense. I'm on some pretty hefty ADHD meds right now to try and help me deal with the additional hit to my attention regulation that long COVID brought me. You actually struggle with empathy. You have a decent cognitive empathy, but it takes a lot of effort. And That's why I was like, tend to, because I don't want to say everybody has or nobody has, because once you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. But for me, getting through school meant having to figure out what the like trying to understand what the other kids were saying and doing and meaning. It takes time. Everybody's got different abilities, different strengths and weaknesses. I would venture to guess that those females with autism, it shows up differently, mainly because we have to mask so highly amongst other females. The masking is a huge thing, and it's exhausting. It's utterly exhausting. Oh, everything is chopping again. Come on, hang in there. In the years since her daughter's vaccine reaction, Lydia says healthcare workers have become more aware of vaccine hesitancy and how to work with nervous parents. My nurse was great, she said. You do what you can handle, what your anxiety can handle. I'll keep track of what's remaining, and we'll go as fast or as slow as you want, Lydia remembers. Nowadays, she speaks at public events about overcoming her own vaccine hesitancy and is part of an online support group that talks through fears that parents have. She also tries to have those conversations in her work as a nurse, something she thinks was missing for her. Oof, mood, yeah. My autism side has built strategies for my ADHD side, but I still have a hard time dealing with distractions and if the items are out of place or outcomes are not what I'm anticipating. Yes, absolutely, plain power. In other words, I can lose my shit on small things. I'm actually in a support group for managing powerful emotions. And pretty much everyone in that class is neurodivergent, whether ADHD or autism or both. And I'm learning a lot of really helpful things. And I do recommend plain power. If you have trouble losing your shit over small things, that means your life can be disrupted by the small things. I do highly recommend finding a support group similar to mine. It was free, so it's worth doing. It's worth doing. Any kind of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, especially if it's made for people who are neurodivergent, I do recommend. I found an online workbook that was specifically a DBT workbook for people on the spectrum. Actually, hang on a second. I'll be right back. I'll grab it. Yeah, the problem with people with powerful emotions is people see our reactions as the problem because that when they're so big, but when we control our reactions, then it's much more visible than the people who trigger those through their bad behavior. Suddenly their bad behavior is in the spotlight. So it does make other relationships hard. And I've been finding this has been really helpful. But yeah, so I highly recommend this book. I got handouts from it in my first, I got handouts from it when I was when I had some but brain working psychiatry through my long COVID clinic. Highly recommend it, guys. Highly recommend. Available on Amazon. Really, really good. And most of what I'm learning in my DBT, in my managing powerful emotions class, I found in here. So I'll put the name in the chat. Yeah. Fight or flight. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whereas me, it's crying. My mother, it's anger. So it works out well. Anyway, highly recommend the book, especially if you're struggling. It really, really helped me out. And was part of what helped me realize that I have autism. Yeah. Emotions were frowned upon. Absolutely. My mother's a boomer, and I'm on that cusp between millennial and Gen X. I know I don't look that age, but I am. And so my mother's generation, emotions were frowned upon, and so she learned to tamp down her emotions until she blew. And her blowing left me with all sorts of issues, including overly strong crying response. Anyway, things have been helpful since. Things have been helpful. Okay. Encoding overloaded. Ugh. Come on. All right. Maybe if I do